Please listen carefully.
Welcome back to the Focus Target Podcast. This is your host, Smiley. With me, as always, Van and Shy. Gentlemen, good afternoon.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, afternoon. I guess it all depends where you live. And where our viewers are. Maybe it's morning. Maybe it's overnight. Whenever you're catching this podcast.
Can we talk about that? Can we have an important discussion about that? Because I know it transitions from morning to afternoon at noon, right? But what about from afternoon to evening? Is there a hard line for that too?
I think probably most people consider 5 o'clock to be the transitionary time, but I don't know if that's official. It's a great question for our listeners. What time?
Question of the day.
Could be a question of the day back to folks. What time do you consider to be evening time? Probably, maybe a lot of people just think about like when the sun goes down. Or like when it starts to get dark, which obviously this is going to change from throughout the year. I don't know.
Why can't it be a question of the night?
Ooh, I like it.
When would we ask the question of the evening? When would it be appropriate to ask that question? That's the problem.
I've completely derailed this podcast, and I apologize for nothing.
Instead, we're going to go to the question of the day.
Nice.
And the question of the day today is, this is our first episode after the 4th of July. We just had 4th of July a couple days ago. So, in the spirit of the 4th of July Memorial Holiday, what is your favorite 4th of July memory? Tell us about a 4th of July that you that you remember for good, bad, or otherwise reasons. Let's start with Shy.
So I don't remember if it was on the 4th of July, but it's definitely 4th of July themed. But one that sticks out to me is going to see Independence Day when it came out in theaters.
That's not fair. I have like one 4th of July memory.
It's like the one time that Smiley lets me go first on question of the day, and then I take Van's answer.
I was gonna go to Van first, but he looked like he was doing something else. So I was like, well, if he's not ready, I'm going to Shy.
I was tweeting to our faithful Twitter followers that we are now live and sending them the link so they can easily hop in and watch us.
I like that you called them fateful instead of faithful. I think that.
No, they're both.
I think that's
more
accurate.
It's more meaningful that way.
As I think we would all agree, that movie was it's an awesome experience, and in the theaters even more so. And the first time you're watching it, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know all the awesome lines that are going to be said and all the memorable characters. How iconic Randy Quaid would be for the rest of history. There you go.
So you said it was an awesome movie. Would you say it was probably one of the most awesome movies ever?
I would say it's one of my most favorite movies ever made. Do I think it is a good movie on a definable spectrum of quality?
This is about 4th of July, not Groundhog's Day. So let's go to Van. Van, what do you got?
Well, I mean, it's nothing groundbreaking, but mine was watching Independence Day with my family. I was trying to think of that too, and I was like, what is it like? Maybe it was playing with fireworks at my old house, because we don't have fireworks here at the new place. We're too far in the desert. Things are too dry. We're too much in a drought. California is always on fire, so they don't allow fireworks in our city. It doesn't mean they don't happen, but we just can't buy them legally. So then I'm going to pivot over to just generalized firework launching at my old house in Almani with my family on 4th of July, which is something that we can't do here. So we often will not spend 4th of July at our house so that we can go somewhere to light fireworks, which as an adult, I started thinking back on this and don't misunderstand what I'm about to say. I'm probably one of the most patriotic persons in the world, but it just seems bizarre to me that we let ourselves as adults light things on fire and blow things up and shoot fire into the sky and all this stuff like one day a year. We're just like, fuck it, go out there and light stuff on fire. I don't care. It just seems like a bad idea. But again, I wouldn't have it any other way. I just find it bizarre.
It always struck me weird, and I've never been active duty military, so somebody who has been maybe could set me straight on this. But like, it sound like 4th of July is meant to, like what we're doing is basically reenacting a wartime scenario, right? Like when you go outside, it sounds like you're in a war zone.
Yeah.
Like bombs are going off and there's whistling. Things are sounds.
Yeah, fire streaking across the sky.
It's really like. I guess I'd have to ask people who've actually been in that kind of combat before, but like, is that Is that cool? Like, do you want to be reminded of that? Do you want to be taken back to those situations, which I feel like are generally considered not probably the highlight of people's lives? I don't know. It's always struck me as a strange thing to do, but you know,
I mean,
Yeah.
is it
Well,
based?
in
Yeah.
fear of in fear of sounding like communists, we should probably move on from that question.
I'm not afraid of sounding like a communist. Would you have something, Shy?
I would say, like, is it basically based off the idea of like the national anthem, like bombs bursting in air? Is that? I
I
mean,
believe so.
yeah. I mean,
That's how I always understood it. But well, to answer my question, I was gonna say I was gonna say watching Independence Day every year as part of like the tradition, and that's certainly part of it. But I grew up in Estes Park, which is a small mountain town, and they, um, you know, as Van said, in recent years, based on the fire danger, they've had to scale things back on certain years. But when I was a kid, it wasn't so bad, and they always had a huge show. Like it was really one of the biggest touristy days of the year up there, where everybody would come out and like there was a big show put on by the town over the lake. And I just have many fond memories, like year after year, of running around with my friends with like firecrackers and like the kind of small, cheap things that you could buy legally, and then watching this big fireworks show every night, just like of the excitement of it. And like I can think, every year that's just what we did. We didn't have to go anywhere because, our town put on an awesome show. So, except for the one year when because of the fire danger they had to do a laser light show instead, and people thought that was going to be really cool, and it was really lame. And it was like, this sucks so bad. Where's the fireworks?
Kind of
But
like
even
adding
that was a
that tracer function to the hockey puck for a couple years that didn't go over too
oh
well.
yeah, that Fox did, yeah, where the what did they call that? They had a name for it, and it was really
Yeah, forgot. So my plan now that we're having this discussion, because our city also does a firework display, and the park is like maybe just 2 blocks away. So from our second story, or my neighbor's second story house, which happens to be our in-laws, we can actually see the firework display pretty good. So I think it's my obligation, nay, my duty as a father, to make a new best 4th of July memory and take my kids to that show next time, because they were super happy with the little poppers that we bought here and party poppers and stuff like that. So I was afraid they'd be afraid of all the booms and everything, but they didn't even wake up. They just slept through everything. So they're good.
4th of July was always one of my favorite holidays as a kid.
Same.
Like, it's just fun. Back when summers were fun because you didn't have to work. When you were just like, it was actually like a summer vacation. Like,
yeah, you were going to be out on the streets anyways. So then when it got dark, it was just that much cooler because you're out in the street dark and there's stuff on fire everywhere. Not like a riot though, but like a celebration.
In danger of sounding like a communist, maybe we should move on.
All right, well, if you have a favorite 4th of July memory that you'd like to share with us, let us know. Drop us a line. We'll talk about it on the air perhaps if we find it compelling. So let's get into the meat of our topic, and we didn't address the meat of the topic at the top of the show deliberately because I didn't want to scare off all the viewers. But now you've heard the question of the day. You got what you came for. Now you guys can tune out because we are going to talk about Final Fantasy XI. Wah wah.
Oh,
here we go again.
I don't know. Concern about this podcast.
Listen, my biggest concern, we're probably not going to fill the whole time, so if you stick around to the end.
Yeah, exactly. Bingo.
Yeah. Here we are. So we got about 50 minutes to see if we can contain ourselves. So why are we talking about Final Fantasy XI again? Well, the biggest reason is because recently a couple of us have stumbled upon an old-timey Final Fantasy XI server. It's called Eden, and it basically seeks to replicate the state of the game from 2007, which was the Treasures of Adergan expansion. So that means that everything that came after that, which was Wings of the Goddess and Abyssia, and all the sweeping changes that both of those expansions made, are not included. With a couple small caveats and one large caveat, the large caveat being level sync, which they did implement their own version of, which that was a Wings of the Goddess expansion. So because of that, there's been a number of private servers that we have looked into in the past that we've kind of found lacking for a various number of reasons. But after working on this one for a while, And Van, I'm going to start with you on this because you and I have been playing for about a week now. In fact, exactly a week. I think we started a week ago today when we started talking about Final Fantasy XI at the end of our last podcast. So you can see the cause and effect relation here. We just rolled right into it. We both downloaded the Eden software and have been playing on that server. What have you thought about it so far as how it handles what it sets out to do, which is recreate an era experience of 2007?
Yeah. As you mentioned, we've tried a few of them, Nasomi, and I can't remember a couple of the other titles. So player participation aside, meaning how many active players there are and everything like that, I feel like it absolutely by far is the best one to capture that feeling that I was looking for in revisiting those private servers before. It happens to have the highest population. I think they're running. They have the statistics on there, so I don't want to give bad information, but it's anywhere between 600 and 800 active players at any given time.
When I've checked a number of times. It's always kind of in that range.
I think they even go into as far as to determine how many of those are coming from individual IPs too, right? Because if everybody's dual boxing, then you really have 300 players as opposed to 600. But in this case, I think it was 1.3%, or not 1.3. Well, whatever. Yeah, somewhere around 600, 800 players active. 1.3 individual IPs. I don't know what I'm trying to say. So, but
1.3 characters per IP.
Yes,
I saw that as well.
Yeah.
Like basically every third person had an alt.
Is dual
right?
boxing or had an alt or something like that. Yeah. So so take that for what you will. But overall, it just I haven't run into any bugs yet, but I haven't done much outside of simple leveling and a few city quests and things like that. I have followed their Discord, which is something that the other servers, if they did have, I just didn't participate in as much as this one. They're very active on their Discord. They respond to bugs immediately. They even put out patch notes and things like that. So it's been maintained really well, and it really does a very good job of capturing that Odd Ergen era feel to the game, while making the conscious decision to keep some of those quality of life but non-breaking, or I guess community agreed upon improvements to games that came after Odd Ergen, like level sync, for example, and things of that nature. But it's pretty neat. It feels great. It feels like being back there, just seeing the tellies inside the cities for 3K to dem, and the economy, the auction house seems pretty stable. Prices seem pretty stable. They have linked all the auction house, which I think was a post Odd Ergen function as well. But that's a great feature to have, in my opinion. So they've done some really cool stuff. It feels great. The game's been running very smoothly, and I've been super happy with it lately. So I'm stoked about it.
It seems like the main changes that they took, the quality of life stuff they took, were things that were really necessary for a smaller population game, right? Like the level sync, for example. Like it'd really be hard to find parties, without level sync. It'd be hard to find items on the auction house if they weren't combined. They also made it so you can actually list as many things on the auction house as you want. You're not restricted to 7, and they last for 90 days instead of like 72 hours or 96 hours or whatever it was previously. So it encourages you to just, like, even things that are maybe a little bit cheaper, put them up there. That way people can find them, because in retail it was like, if it wasn't over a certain dollar threshold, it's like, why would I waste an auction house slot on this? So they kind of took that out so that you can actually find things on the auction house as a lower level player. Like, I feel like there's more stuff. And remember, I played retail not that long ago. Like, I was subbed, I don't know, less than a year ago, I would say. Like, there's all kinds of stuff on the auction house that you could not find in the retail version because nobody bothers to list it because it's just not relevant, or it's just not worth it. So a lot of good little changes, I think, that keep, as Van said, keep the spirit of what they're trying to do, but also being real about, like, we have a lesser player base. We have to, like, make it doable at the same time. Shy, I want to kind of get your input when you, like, I know you haven't joined us in this particular quest, but like, if you were going to go back, if you had a private server that you wanted to join, what would you look for on it? Like, what kind of things would be appealing to you as far as, like, where they tried to hold the game and what they included or didn't include? Like, what would be the key features that you would care about?
Yeah, I mean, I think I came into the game a lot later than you guys.
You did.
So
Yeah.
so Rido and I started, and this is a question for you, I guess. So you're saying that this is the 2007 era of TOAU. Is that the end of TOAU? Did Wings of the Gods come out at the end of 2007, or was it early
I believe so.
2008? Because
I'll effort that.
because Rido and I started with Wings of the Goddess, and I think it was probably early Wings of the Goddess potentially, because it was probably
November 2007 was Wings of the Goddess.
I think we started sometime in 2008, probably. Either I forget if it was spring, summer, or fall. But so we came in with those changes in mind. So I think there was already level sync. There was already that those features in place. Now it was obviously pre-Abyssia. I feel like it was still. I don't know what you guys' opinion would be, but 11 hadn't become the game it is now. I don't think quite. I mean, obviously they were adding new features and changing things. The past changed things and different stuff like that. But so I didn't have this experience of like seeing like kind of vanilla 11 evolve to where it was by TOAU or Wings of the Goddess era. So I was perfectly happy with how the game was in Wings of the Goddess. I really enjoyed Final Fantasy XI. So I would be fine with it even being Wings of the Goddess era, in my opinion. I never experienced it before that. I think I knowing that TOAU, I definitely, because what was changed to Promathia before TOAU, is that correctly? It was COP, then TOAU, then Wings of the Goddess. Like I never, so like I don't really. Obviously, I know what the Wings, the COP stuff. Like what, like we're both C and Sky was TOAU, right?
COP was after Treasure of Ottergin.
No.
No, sorry, I'm getting Treasure of Ottergin confused with Rise of the Zealark. Never mind.
Rise of the Zealark was Sky. COP was C.
Yeah.
Treasures of Ottergin was a variety of others.
So C, like, obviously I did see, I knew some of the stuff from COP, but like, I don't know. I mean, the fact that it's limited to TOE wouldn't like be a turnoff for me personally, like content wise. I think it's cool to know, like, see they haven't like stuck with just the one, like, oh, this is the state of the game, we got to stick to it. Like they've made some quality of life changes, like you mentioned.
Quite a few.
Are you able to use plugins like we're used to, like Windowware and stuff like that, with their client?
For the most part, they have a ban, like a restricted list on certain plugins. Usually, most of the stuff that I don't think we use, but maybe some of our associates might have used. So some of the more exploity ones you can't use, but all the like quality of life ones, like EXP Watch and even Spellcast, things like that. They have versions of that. Gear change, a lot of those ones that are standard are allowed. So yes.
I was gonna say, like, that state of the game, I don't know if how much you would even need spellcast. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like you're rolling with as much gear as you were like by the time Abyssia came around.
On your job, like, and because I do think I don't know if they have the gear sets that they added later. I don't know if that's actually in it, but like for like Black Mage, for example, you absolutely need spellcast. Well, I guess you don't. I guess you don't necessarily.
Because I can remember with like,
you can get a certain number of gear, but like it is something that you could use if you do. But you're right, it's not quite the same because you don't quite have the same library of.
Well, like with Abyssia Plus, like in Void Watch, you started getting the randomly rolled stats on gear, so you could have the same gear piece, like 4 different of it. With like one had like your your casting speed, one had your magic, and you like had to like utilize all 4 of those pieces plus other set gear, like at 6 different stages of your spellcast. So I don't know. I mean, I think like an active player base, like you said, that'd be key. Is it completely free? Are they like donations only, or like? I mean, I'm guessing they
don't even allow donations.
Oh wow, man! So just like completely their own goodwill, their own. Yeah,
that's right. And because of that, they're very harsh on RMT.
That's
like,
cool.
We haven't as Van mentioned, the economy is incredibly stable. Like it is basically like what it was at the beginning of the game. I feel like.
Yeah,
like,
100%. Like I'm searching the auction house, and there's low-level items available at appropriate prices. People are killing enough low-level items so that there's low-level spells available for you to purchase. Like there is stuff there, and it is very similar to the prices that I remember when we first launching the game. But I know where you're headed with this, which is just an awesome thing that they do. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
Going back down to RMT and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's important. And I think it sounds like, too, so one of the things that I think is really great, the thing that really makes it a little magical again for me, is that the NMs drop their actual items again. So you might remember in retail, to counter, because all all the Leaping Lizzie and the Valkyrie Emperor and everything, it was all botted so heavily by RMT that they basically made those drops the Rare X version so you couldn't sell it, and then moved those items to BCNMs instead if you wanted to get the sellable versions. Well, because they don't have us, they crack down on botting and RMT and things like that, and they have more control. They don't have to do that, and so the items from the NM drops are actually the original items, which you can sell for a large amounts of money, which is awesome, and kind of brings that excitement to camping NMs back. That, like, it really does feel like a winning the lottery in a way if you were to see one of those drops, because money is very tight, especially for new and returning players. So I think that is pretty cool. It's a cool feeling to have those pieces back in there, and adds a little extra excitement to that.
Yeah, they're so strict as to. So one thing that sets them apart also is that you need to be not whitelisted, but you need to be given a registration code from either an active player or an admin from the community. And that's the only way you can actually start playing on this server. So you can imagine they're not going to be handing these things out willy-nilly to RMTs. They also monitor traffic via IPs, so they don't allow you to have more than 3 characters logged in at any given time, and your third character can only be used as a mule or like a bazaar host, right? And they can't exit the city, and they do monitor traffic. So if they see that you have 3 people, all 3 of them are outside of a city, then they will crack down on that and ban your account and whatnot. So they're very strict about what's going on. And I think Smiley had mentioned that he saw a post from just last year that they banned like 300 players or 600 accounts in like 2 weeks or something like that. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, for both sides RMT, whether you were a buyer, a seller, a botter, or what, like if they caught you, they were quick on it. And I think it's awesome because like I was just kind of on the game today, reading Link Shell chat, and like a bunch of there are people in our Link Shell that were talking about like 4 or 5 different people had claimed Valkyrie Emperor. And they were talking about how like one guy was like 0 of 22, and another guy was 2 of 2, and so there was a lot of angst about that. But to me, that just shows like this is just a random Link Shell. Like we're just part of like a progression, not even an end game thing. And like random people are able to get these NMs. That tells me that it's not botted by a cabal of RMT like it used to be. Like I feel like back in the day there was a point where you were like, you didn't really have a chance at some of these NMs, like you were getting outclaimed by people who were cheating, and I just don't feel like that is the perception or the case on this server, and I think that's pretty cool. That's better than it was back when we used to play like that. That was almost like an ideal state. One of the benefits I think of it not being Wings of the Goddess, because Wings of the Goddess, to go back to something you were talking about, Shai, you were talking about how Wings of the Goddess really wasn't that different for you. Because that's what you started with, and I think there's a lot like that's kind of the line in the sand that most people draw is whether like most people would agree if you wanted to have a retro server like this, you got to at least have up through Treasures of Adergan because there's so much good content there. The question is whether or not you include Wings of the Goddess. I know there are some private servers that do. The reason I think it's smart that they didn't is because of a diversity of mob camps. I think one of the things that Wings of the Goddess introduced that really made the game, it wasn't quite as bad as Abyssea, but it was kind of that downhill effect, was that you could fight Calibri so much earlier by going to the past. And so what happens is when you have Wings of the Goddess, you basically, once you hit level 30, you're fighting Calibri the entire rest of the game. You fight them from 30 all the way up to merit parties. You never fight anything else because nothing else is as EXP efficient. And so like not having that for at least like until like say 54 or whatever when you can go to the Treasure of Adergan areas and actually fight Calibri as it was intended really helps like diversify where you EXP. I think like, and one of the cool things that I've enjoyed is I've seen shouts for EXP parties in all kinds of places that I hadn't seen shouts for years. Like people are in freaking Sanctuary of Zeta looking for parties. They're in Boyatry, they're in Crawler's Nest, like all these old school camps that people used to use. But then once Wings of the Goddess came out, it's like, why would you ever EXP there when you can just do birds and get twice EXP an hour? Like, it just didn't make sense. So I think that's the big thing to me that I think is a good reason. I also think campaign was really cool. but I think it was kind of a nightmare to code, and probably for a smaller group of devs. Like, I imagine doing that whole campaign, like with the monsters constantly attacking and juggling all, like that's probably a lot of technical trouble that could, you know, could save them a headache not having to deal with it. Is my other guess why they didn't go that route. But
When were campaigns introduced? Was that
those
post?
wings,
Or
those wings of the goddess.
that was WTG? Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, got it.
And that was a cool system. Like I enjoyed
Right.
campaign. I thought that was fun, but I can live without it.
Yeah, same. Yeah, the other thing they did really well, as far as quality of life goes, is you can do an all server shout or an all server
the
yell,
yell.
but you're only allowed to do it once every 15 minutes. So the cool thing is, like, you used to have those people sitting in Juno, right? The gamblers sitting in Juno running their freaking casinos and all that stuff or whatnot. And it was just annoying as heck, or botters, or guild sellers and all that stuff. But now, so if you have something meaningful, sure, you can get your message across to the entire server once every 15 minutes. So if you are seeking a party, you can go ahead and throw that out, what level you are, what you are, and you're seeking a party and whatnot. So it is pretty cool because then we get to see all the different activities like Smiley was talking about. He's not in Sanctuary Zeta, but we're seeing these shouts saying, hey, I'm XYZ level. I'd like to get a party going to Sanctuary Zeta. Anybody else interested and whatnot? And you can do that shout once every 15 minutes. So you got to be very purposeful with those. Of course, you still have yells, which are, region based or area based, or zone based. Yeah. Or shouts. Yeah. That are. Yeah, exactly. So.
When did the was it Dynamis? Was that? I'm trying not to confuse. What came out with Abyssia pre like?
No, Dynamis was very
Dynamis is way before that. Yeah.
Yeah, but like
yeah, that was, I don't know, because in North America the game launched with Rise of the Zillart. That was the launch. It was only out without Rise of the Zillart in Japan. So I don't know for sure whether Dynamis was included with the base version of the game or if that was also a Rise of the Zillart edition. But I believe it was the base game, like, because you don't need any. Yeah. You only need to be rank 6 to do Dynamis. You don't need any other content clears.
But do you have like to get the feel that people are out there doing stuff like Dynamis, doing stuff like Sea and Sky, and like that there is an active end game? All right.
Yeah, you just saw that shout for that link show, right? There was a link show recruiting for like an end game, 1 hour a night from whatever time it was for Dynamis and all these other things, all these type of link shells. So, yeah, Smiley loves Dynamis.
I've never really even done Dynamis.
Oh, I love it. Oh man, funny. I have good memories of Dynamis.
No, you're thinking Z. Z loves.
Oh, was it Z who loves Dynamis? He's like, I'm never doing Dynamis again.
Yeah, Z did not like Dynamis. Yeah.
I never really did it. I wasn't in game at that point, and by the time I was, it was a busier time, so the Dynamis had kind of fallen off. But I do see, you see people shout, like there's some guy who shouts once an hour or so about wanting to trade bind bills for some other type of currency.
Yeah.
Like, it's definitely going on.
The Montiant pieces and the I'm trying to think, what's the third one? Shells, white shells, T white shells,
white shells, yeah. Or whatever.
Oh man,
But yeah, what's crazy about it to me is it's because it is pre-Abyssy, and this is the part where I wonder what Shy would think about this, because you did come in a little bit later where it was probably a little bit easier to get to 75. You guys probably got to 75 a little bit quicker.
I mean, it took us about a year, I think. So I mean, it definitely wasn't. I mean, it felt. So I think it wasn't as bad because you talk about, and I guess maybe we didn't know the power of Wings of the Goddess. Maybe I'm misselling it. I mean, because I thought, because we started Xbox 360, and I thought that was with Wings of the Goddess, but maybe there was a version before Wings of the Goddess that came out. Like I don't remember us starting out by doing like level syncing in the past. Like we didn't discover that until we started playing with you guys. Like we did the old school like level camps. I remember fighting Dommels and like.
Probably your first time through, though. Even if you were just starting then, like you wouldn't have had access.
And that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking. We probably didn't have access. Yeah.
You probably maybe just didn't know.
Yeah.
Know how to do it or have the ability to get there.
So that first level 75 was a grind, and
yeah, and it is. It's very slow. It's like we've come a long way, I think, because people know the game so well. Mm-hmm. But like we don't make the mistakes that we made on launch. We weren't like, I remember the first party I was in the Dunes was actually a full alliance of 18.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, here in Eden,
I,
or in the original
No, I think
game?
he's talking about like
in the original
yeah.
game, in the original, like probably like day 2 of launch, when I had finally gotten strong enough to go to Lethene, and like people were like, "Oh, you go to the dunes. That's what the JP players do. They go to the dunes when they hit level 10." And so like we formed this alliance, and we're trying to fight, and we're fighting, and like everyone's like, "Man, EXP's not very good, but I guess this is what you do." And then night came around,
Oh no.
and people started aggroing bogeys and ghouls, and the entire alliance got wiped out. And we're like, how do the JP people do this at level 10? This is insane. We can't even, like, we just got murdered out here. And we're just like, what is going on? Like, we just didn't know how to play. It was amazing.
Man.
Um, amazing memories. That was my first, I think that was my first death. One of my first deaths. Was when we wiped as an alliance and just,
That's funny.
oh man, it was
Like,
crazy.
It's weird the things that your mind chooses to remember specifically.
Yeah.
Right, these points in time. Like I said, I've had 38 Fourth of Julys now, but I remember distinctly the one going to watch Independence Day in the movie theaters. I know what the sky was on that day. I remember who I went with. I know exactly the theater and all that fun stuff. And I have the same similar thing with my first party ever in Final Fantasy XI. I was new to MMORPGs together. I just thought it was absolutely fascinating that a world in a video game could exist whether you were in it or not. And as soon as you logged out,
Yeah.
like it was still going. Things were still happening.
Things
It was
were
still in
happening,
motion.
right.
And that was just mind blowing to me. So I absolutely wanted to be a part of this thing. And I logged in. And so finally when I was level enough so it's funny because we say like leveling is still super slow. Well, dude, we were partying in the dunes on our second or third day. In retail, or when I played originally, I don't think I had my first party for a month, maybe. Like I was doing so much stuff just around the city, trying to learn what was going on, how to level my characters, all this stuff, testing out different ones and everything. But anyways, I remember my first party, I went in as a ward. And I didn't understand party dynamic at all. I just thought like we all go in there, we all fight together, we all do stuff. And they're like, oh no, you got to provoke all the time. You got to be the tank. And I know what the hell a tank was. And so, yeah, I actually got booted from my first party ever that I was in. And then somebody like tailed me on the side and they're like, hey dude, sorry, they had to let you go, blah, blah, but the tank is supposed to do X, Y, Z. And I know you're a new player and that kind of sucked and everything, but like, this is what you should really do on the next player and all that stuff. And I was like, okay, cool. I appreciate the feedback. Went into my next one and made sure I provoked all the time and used my proper food and all that stuff. But no, I remember 100%.
It's nice that he told you that. Like they
Yeah.
took the time to set you straight. Because I mean, that could be a very damaging experience with the
that could have
game.
been
We're
it
like,
for a lot of
yeah,
people,
where you're like,
right?
okay, I guess I don't know what to do. Nobody will tell me what to
Right.
do. I can't get a party. No one want when I get a party, they kick me out. Like this game sucks. I'm out of here. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, a bunch of elitists. And then we became the elitists.
Well, that actually brings me to the next point that I wanted to make is I think we talked about this a little bit, Van, but like how impressed we are with the community on this server.
Yeah.
Like it's a very mature community. Like people are very helpful. People are very friendly. It makes me. I was kind of surprised by it because I was like, this is not what it was like when we used to play. But I think
But it was though. Like maybe it's a little bit more over the top. Like for me, and I've noticed this in a lot of games all the time. Like even DayZ and Final Fantasy XI, and not so much of 14 because I don't think I played it long enough. But I always see like the first year or two, like the community is very strong. Everybody's always out to help each other, and then as soon as you start getting those people who become higher level, or half the player base is high level and the other few are still low level, like you start to get this elitism, and then like people just not really collaborating, and you have to be this good in order for us to talk to you or even be considered to be going to this party or whatnot. And I saw that with 11, and I saw it with DayZ. Like in the beginning, the zombie shooter, everybody's working collectively, and then after that, like literally within 8 months, it was shoot on sight. Like nobody was willing to help anybody at that point, and it was everyone for themselves. So I feel like I do like that this has captured that feeling from the beginning too, but it is more though. You're right, Smiley. It's not. I don't think 11 retail was ever as community based as this one seems to be, or the people I've interacted with are certainly more often nicer than I've ever experienced, even in the beginning of retail. So,
well, you don't see, and I mean, part of it maybe it's because it is more monitored and stuff, but like even in towns with shouting, like you don't see, like remember, like there always used to be like a constant stream of
banter.
stupid
Yeah.
bullshit. of like just people being dumb and like XXX Sephiroth arguing with Grandma Boner 69. Like you'd have all these people who are obviously like 12-year-old kids just like shooting off at the mouth, and like I just haven't really noticed anything like that. And
Well,
it's
those,
because, yeah, go
I was
ahead.
gonna say,
I
those
think
two
we're gonna
things
make
would
the
have been
same point.
violations in their
Oh.
terms in their, so it's in their
Yeah.
in their rules. Is number one, you can't have a name called Boner 69 Grandma, right? Like it's just not allowed. And then the second thing they say is you're not allowed to have banter openly like that. Like if you have a dispute with somebody, you are required to take it to tell. Otherwise, you will get a warning and whatnot.
Yeah,
So
I actually
that's
saw
awesome.
I saw a warning today while I was
Oh, no.
when I was online, like in yells. It was like like watch your yells or something as a system
Yeah.
notification because people were there was whatever. Some dude was shouting for what sounded like a racist.
But that was
thing,
my
shouting
biggest
at
thing
people.
too. It was like I was
Yeah.
like, why are you guys arguing about politics in front, like in lower Juneau? Like take that crap to the side.
All
Nobody
the
cares
time.
about
It
your
never
opinion.
stopped. It never
Yeah.
stopped. It's I don't know. It's got an interesting feel to it, and I feel like it's probably because the people playing on this server are much more likely to be older, right? Like young people aren't coming to old school Final Fantasy. Like,
Yeah.
There's a reason they don't make games like this anymore. It's because
Yeah.
they're not popular with the masses. It's people who played it back in the day and yearn for it who come to it. And so I think we're dealing with primarily like a 30 to 40 age range of people. And so I think you just get people who are a little bit more level-headed, people who have stuff going on that in their real life and know that it's still just a game. It's not that important. So I've been impressed with that. So we wanted to talk. We had talked before when we had set up this topic. We had made some points about like if we did start fresh today, what would you choose based on like your like what kind of race and class and kind of what objectives would you had if you went back to the game? Well, Shy can still speak hypothetically about that. Van and I actually could answer not what we did, but what they are. So let's start with Shy. Shy, what like if you were to start fresh in Final Fantasy XI whether it was an era of your choosing, I guess what would you change? What race and class would you want to make your mains? And like what would you come back for? What would your goals and objectives in the game be? Like would you have any? Like, and maybe that's hard to answer. Maybe there's a reason you haven't come back because you don't have those kind like you
don't
would
have
have any
goals
goals
in
or
your life?
objectives. Yeah, like
I mean-
you're like I mean
It's
like
an
some-
interesting it's an interesting thought experiment because I haven't put serious thought into it, and so like it is interesting to kind of stop and be like, what would I do? I think I made a comment to Van the other night. He hopped into a stream I was doing of a game I'm playing, and I made the comment like it's hard for me to think about going back and seriously playing 11 because I did so much in the game already, and that exists on a database on a character already. Like to go and start from scratch, I'm not. In a game that takes that much time, I'm not someone who likes starting from scratch. There have been times where you guys went back to the official client and started new characters and tried that experience, and I did not participate because it's like it hurts to think about it, like to do all that work again. But I mean, as a thought experiment, like I don't know. I don't think I would start as a ranger again. As much as I love the ranger archetype in games, like it was a super dumb decision, and the amount of time I spent in the original game just farming money. Like I just always needed money because you needed ammo and you needed like.
It's the job that pays the most to level.
Yeah, and like it's a job.
Money for EXP.
Like a year into the game when I first or maybe it was 6 months or whatever when I finally met you guys and I heard about Arius and met other rangers, like they were all people who had a lot of money, like they'd built up finance in the game and then they'd started playing ranger or whatever, and I'm like, man, I'd started from scratch and I'm like out in like mining chroma ores like 3 days a week trying to like just make ends meet. So I don't know. I think I would be tempted to do monk. I mean, I don't know that I'd want to ever get a black belt again, but I mean, I really liked monk. I don't think I'd want to tank. I think one class I never got into that would be like, the what? No. No. I think one class
Puppet Master is not a class. It's
like
a meme.
like the bandwagon class. I don't know if it's the same in Eden, but like Sam, I never really gave Sam a shot. I know like when I started, that was the bandwagon class at the time because you could use pole arms. It was just the Hagen existed, and it was like the top, the DPS everybody wanted in endgame. But like I think that would be interesting to just try out Sam
I think
seriously.
it's still popular because I've heard people, I've seen either in Link Shell or Shouts, people talking about Sobero, Hagen, and I guess those are the only two. But
Yeah.
like both of those came up. Those are the only named weapons I think I've seen. Really, I've seen a couple. I've seen a couple like Blau Dolk shouts and stuff. But
Gotcha.
like, yeah, I think Samurai is still pretty popular.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, I
I mean,
loved.
it was the king DPS at the time, so it makes
Yeah.
sense.
I love Dark, but I mean, that's just too dangerous of a class to play. Like, you just keep killing yourself. So I mean, it's just, I don't know. I think Race. Yeah, I played a Mithra, which made sense for Ranger. I would potentially try Taru just because I always thought Tarus were adorable. So maybe a Taru Sam. I don't know. As far as objectives, like I said, like that makes it even harder to think about because I did so much in the previous game. But like it would be like amusing to play again, work my way up to endgame, and join a Skylink shell, and finally get Byakko Haidate, which is the one thing, like, out of all the time I spent playing Sky, the multiple link shells, 1 to 2 years in Skylink shells, like, never having gotten those.
But if there's one thing that would make it a little bit sweeter is in the time when we did it, because I got mine with you in that same shell, like, it was still an important piece. It was a good piece. But it wasn't the be-all, end-all piece that it was before. And it was actually outclassed pretty soon after I got it, within a year.
Yeah.
Like, we had gotten new Abyssia gear that basically I made it obsolete. And so it would be cool, and that's actually gonna come up on mine, is like, how cool would it be to get some of these pieces and have them actually be like, this is the best in slot piece. Like, this is like, and like knowing a little bit too that like this is a fixed, like they're not planned. It's not like, oh, we're gonna be rolling into to Wings of the Goddess in a like, they're like, no, this is where it is. So like there is actually like a best in, like you could gear your character out to have best in slot gear and know that it's like, I feel like that makes the effort you put into it a little bit more valid, to know that, like, in any MMO you feel like however much time I spend getting a piece, it's probably going to be outclassed eventually. Like, that's just the nature of the game, but that's not the nature of this game. So it kind of is a different spin, which I think is kind of cool.
You're just relying on the goodwill of these game managers that, since they're not making money off of it, like, that they're going to keep it going.
We do need to talk about
maybe we could talk about that towards the end, and that's how we could wrap this up. But I do want to talk about that lingering fear or concern as well.
Let's get back to that for sure. Well, that'll be our next topic. One thing I wanted to say about the point that Shai made was that now I don't remember what. Oh, is that you wanted to be a Taru Samurai? I feel like you'd have to name your character Nipu in that case, just because he was the Taru Samurai of our time.
Maybe Nipu Prime or something.
All right, what about you?
And Tarus, they get the backflip too, right? When they combo and stuff like that, like.
Well, they have the cutest. They have the cutest dances. Yeah, the Tartar monk was awesome. You're right. They had, what was that? Was that Assurin Fists? I think that had the backflip.
Yeah.
Crap.
That should be the only reason to come back.
There's so many good memories of freaking Final Fantasy XI. Like the fact that you would unlock the SCNM weapon skills, or and you'd like skilling up, and like it just was a very gratifying game to play. It just was.
There's still. Let me tell you, from playing all week, there's still nothing better in that game than getting skill ups. Like, I can get skill ups all day long. What a feeling! What a feeling!
So
I mean,
I spent. You sit there and you're like, damn, this mob is taking me 3 times as long to kill as the other one. It's really not XP efficient, but look at those skill ups.
But I got a 0.3. I got a 0.3 on that one. Oh. All right, what about you, man? What did you go with, Race? Oh, please, go ahead. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Chad, what were you going to say? You were going to say something about skills, weren't you?
No, I'm good.
Okay. You don't want to convince yourself any more than you already have?
Yeah.
So I restarted as a Mithra. My original role was a Hume, and I just wanted to try something different. And one thing that I always thought were cool were the cat people out there going around doing cute cat stuff. So I wanted to roll as a Mithra. Plus, they're pretty well rounded. I have a subconscious yearn for Thief for some reason. I don't know why, and I feel like Mithra would be an awesome Thief as well. I think it's just the hunter in me. I love NM hunting. I love farming for some reason, like just going out and collecting stuff and coming back and throwing things in the auction house. Like, I just remember I remember farming so often that every time my brother would come in and see the game on, he's like, "Why the hell are you in the same place? Every time I walk in here, you're in the same place." And it was like Western Baruta farming beehive chips or Miss Silk threads and trying to get Spiny Spippy or whatnot. And I just remember him always making that comment. So, cat person, right now I'm rolling mage just because I've always loved mage. I did do a black mage on my previous character. This one I'm rolling white mage just for the versatility and mobility and money making. So hopefully I can make a bit off of tallies as well. And as far as my goals and objectives, what's that?
Those teleportations for people.
Yeah,
yeah. Playing for 11.
And being able to warp yourself and D2 other people as soon as a party ends, like we used to do to FC all the time. Like those were good times. But and I think I'm gonna make crafting a bigger goal this time around too. So, and Smiley and I had talked about this also. Like my approach to this isn't about checking off boxes, right? It's not like, oh, get Black Mage 75 and then do XYZ and then do this. Like I'm approaching this second re-entry into the Final Fantasy realm as like just a long-term goal to where I'm going to like let the game like embody or like I just want to play the game to be in the game. I don't want to check off boxes and try to go for the next carrot that's dangling. Like I just want to be in the world again. And that was one thing that Final Fantasy did better than any of the other games is you could just exist in it and you could just do things in it. You can go farm, you can go craft, you can go do whatever you want. Yes, if you want to shoot for end game stuff, then sure you got to make some goals that you got to check off. But for this one, like I'm not in a rush to get to 75. I'm not in a rush to get to end game. I'm not in a rush to go do dynamis. I just want to play the game again and have fun in it. And crafting is going to be a big part of that going forward. So, but right now I'm thinking mage. I do know that, well, just for solo reasons, really, once you get into parties, mages level just as fast as any other class, if not faster, especially as a white mage. So.
Well, if you made thief like a secondary job, like there's always a spot for a thief. Like treasure hunter is so valuable. I mean, like maybe not end game. Well, no, I mean even end game. Treasure hunter is so valuable in that game. Like
the problem isn't that there's not always a spot for a thief. The problem is there's always a lot of thieves trying to get that one spot. I think a lot of people have, especially coming back and leveling thief a little bit myself. I think there's a lot of competition. As I've been building parties while I was leveling my warrior, there was a lot of thieves seeking, and so I think obviously it's a popular job for people to have. For as you said, like it's very in demand, but it can be a little bit flooded.
I'll also just do this last comment is that I haven't had so much excitement in a game than I did 2 nights ago when we claimed Leaping Lizzie. Like I haven't had that much just pure like adrenaline spike. Like what the heck is going on? Like can we possibly get this drop kind of thing in like a long time? And it was just really awesome to get that claim. And we were out just trioing, trying to get to level 10 or something like that, or 11 or whatnot. And anyways, on our way back in, we're like, oh, let's just check Leaping Lizzie a little bit. And we saw a bunch of people like popping and zoning in and stuff. And we're like, oh, I wonder if like window's gonna be open soon or something like that. And sure enough, we stuck around for 5 minutes. It popped and we claimed it. And it was just like, this is why I loved everything about this. Like, as soon as we're done, we're just excited and cheering, and it was fun. And we saw another player come by, and we got a Lizzie aggro, and we're like, oh, I know for a matter of fact that person's not going to pull that lizard off of us. They want us to die, and all these things, and it was just so hilarious. Just really felt very era-esque of the time, and it was great.
Yeah, that was a rush.
The amount of times we would sit watching people fight in M's being like, are they going to wipe? Are they going to wipe? Could we get this at M?
He had to be a little excited that we might, because we were a little bit low. And then when we got that second lizard on us, it was a little dicey.
We had a 2-hour. We were like, screw it.
We rolled out a Monofont and a Mighty Strikes, and we got the job done.
Nice.
Didn't get the drop, though. That would have just sealed the deal.
So I kind of flipped with Van. Van took my old character model of Smiley, the redhead Mithra, which is weird just to like see myself when he rolls up. But I went with human, which is what I always should have done. When I originally made Smiley, it was because I wanted to be something that was balanced, but for some reason I thought Mithra would be better stat wise for the jobs that I wanted to play, which is true. But I don't feel like it makes enough of a difference to really, like you should be who you want to be. I think.
Except
You
a
know.
Galka White
Yeah.
Mage.
You
Like
know.
never be a
Well,
Galka White Mage.
there's definitely there's things that are made harder, right? And there's
Yeah.
definitely some stigmas to get around. But I always regretted being a Mithra. Honestly, like I always wish I had been a human. I felt like that was a better matching for what I wanted to do. So. So I did that this time. I started with Warrior because I just think that's the job you start as in any game ever,
It is.
all the time. That's what I
Yeah.
do, and it's just it's a fairly in demand job. It's a strong job to start the game as to get through those first levels because going through without a sub is hard. It's incredible what a difference that sub job makes. In leveling subsequent characters versus that first one, like it was
Yeah.
slow, it was dangerous. Like decent challenges were like 50-50 win lose, like it was a little bit rough. So but now that I've gotten through that, I've got the sub job again, and I'm definitely working. My goals are a little bit different than I originally planned. I had to make some adjustments. Obviously I'm going to be having a child here in the next couple months, so that really changes how I have to approach this, knowing that I'm not going to have the time to level in an exp party very frequently once that baby comes. I don't necessarily even right now. So I wanted to make sure I could put myself in a position where I maybe would still be able to do meaningful things in the game, even if I didn't have the opportunity to necessarily be EXPing. And I think Thief is really the job that gives me that type of versatility, especially because while the economy is stable, like it is, that also means that it's harder to make money, right? Things don't sell for as much. Like you know, your money is harder to come by, and so I think my goal is to try to get Thief as high as I can and as self-sufficient as I can before my child is born. That way, in the times that I have the smaller windows, or the times when maybe I can't afford to be like I can't be unavailable, but I still could play. I feel like there's a lot I could do on Thief, especially with farming and gearing up my other characters, so that on the times that I do have for EXPing and for making progress, I'll be better equipped to do that. My long-term goal would be to try to get into the end game, as you were talking about, Shai. I'd love to get into a Skylink shell again. I thought that was really fun. I think it'd be even more fun now, again, because so much of that gear is so much more relevant. It's been funny seeing people talk about gear that's so expensive and so good, and being like, man, I had that back in the day. I remember when I was so excited to get the V cloak and stuff like that, and the Louisant armor, and like some dude ran by with a Voyager salad the other day, and I was like, oh man, I had that. I think it was a pain in the ass to get, like and Z and I were talking about like the OHAT quest.
Oh my gosh.
Like I was like, I remember when I did that, I was like, I'm so happy I never have to do
The
this.
Hakutaku eye clusters.
Yeah. Oh, remember the eye clusters?
And that boss was no joke. I think Nipu helped Rado and I with it, and he like almost wiped us. I mean, I think FC helped us as well.
And the boss fights weren't just the asshole; like they were always assholes to get there too.
Oh yeah.
Like the whole game is not easy.
It is hard. It's so hard, but it's also like we were talking a little bit the other day, Van. That's what makes it so meaningful too.
Yeah.
The accomplishment you feel when you do things in this game, it's so real, and like I feel like that was lost a little bit as the game got easier and easier and more approachable. Yeah. Like even just getting our sub jobs. Like when I got my sub job, I felt like I was like, oh man, like I got that so much faster than I thought I was gonna be able to. I got so much faster than I did the first time around. Like it felt good. It's a good thing. All right, we're running out of time, and Van, you want to talk a little bit about the sustainability of the game, the longevity, if you will. So take that away, please.
Yeah, I guess like just one lingering concern that I know you've mentioned before, that Shai mentioned organically during the conversation as well, is like that we've talked about what an investment and what a time sink this is and all that, and for that to be at the behest of other developers who we don't know anything about, or they're not even a company, they're just a group of friends who have a passion to do this, as far as we know. Like how long what is their long-term goal, and how long do they plan on keeping it alive? Like we might have an intent to play for the next 2 or 3 years, but are they burning out already after being around for 3 years? And are they thinking possibly it's going to go away in 6 months or whatnot? And I don't know how we answer. In fact, during this podcast, I was just thinking they're super accessible, which is great. And they've all been friendly people. I've talked to a couple of them already. And in fact, I was just talking, shout out to Jewel. I just asked her if I can get if I can get whitelisted onto their streaming, and I just added this Focus Target podcast that we're doing live to the stream channel in their Discord, and she was like, "Oh yeah, go for it right away. Like that sounds cool." So
she's
I think
the one who gave
thing,
me my reg code. So
same, yeah, she gave me my reg code too. I think what we could do as a follow-up sometime is probably get one of those devs on here or one of those community members on this podcast, and that would be really cool to hear it from them, what their long-term goal is, what their short-term goals are, what their plans are, and all that fun stuff. And instead of speculating, we can hear it from them.
Well, to do a little speculating, the one thing that gives me a little bit more confidence is that I guess this is a group of like 30 people who run this. It's not just like one dude.
That's cool.
You know, or like a couple people. And like I think that gives you a little bit more of a safety net where if some like everybody's going to burn out at some point, right? Or has the potential to.
Yeah.
But if it's one person who's like, okay, you know, like, and I saw that in the Discord, like at some point there was a person who was like an admin or something who was like, hey, you know, my time here has come. It's been a great ride, but it's time for me to move on. But like when you've got a bigger group, you can replace that, and it doesn't have to mean, okay, we're shutting down.
Yeah, everything stops, everything pauses. Yeah,
you know, like you could even put, you know, in theoretically have every single person of the original group be replaced over time and still have it be running strong. And maybe, you know, if you can keep those same ideals from the beginning. So I think that helps. That helps give me a little bit more confidence. You know, I agree. I think if this was just like, especially today as I was playing, I was really kind of thinking like, I've spent a lot of time this week on this game, and it's gonna take a lot of time in the future going forward. Is this something I really want to do? Is this really how I want to allocate my time? And like, I don't feel guilty about it because as Sarah mentioned to me, obligatory Sarah shout out on the podcast. As she mentioned to me the other day, like I asked her, I was like, do you feel like I'm playing 11 too much? And she's like, no, like if you weren't playing that, you'd be playing something else. That's what you do. Like you play games. Like, and
that's another problem. Because I want to finish Horizon Zero Dawn, and I'm not anymore. Because
let's say Smiley just got a PS5, and he's like, "Let's play Final Fantasy XI."
That's right. What's wrong with me? I don't know. But that's a great point, though, right? Like, because I would have, like, if I wasn't playing this, I'd be playing Spider-Man or Legend of Mana or something like that. And so, like, and there's nothing that stops me tonight from saying, you know what, I don't really want to play 11 tonight. I'm gonna go play Spider-Man instead. Like, I can still make that choice. But I don't feel a lot of guilt about it. But I do really feel like, is this something that I want to invest in? Because as you said, it's an investment of your time and your effort, your blood, sweat, and tears more than any other game I've played. And like you want it to know that there's going to be some stability to it. And if it was just like one person or like a two-man group, I would be a lot more nervous about investing in it. But the fact that it's a good group, the fact they have this track record of that they've been doing it for a number of years, that you can go back in their Discord and see what they've done, the progress they've made, the consistency they've had, gives me a lot more faith than I would and makes me feel good about it. So
yeah, the last point I'm going to make is that I'm hopeful as well that it's going to stick around, and what leads me to believe that is certainly the case is just how active they are currently. Like they are very attentive, very active, very responsive, not only in Discord but in bug fixing and things like that. Like they're Johnny on the spot still, as if they just have people waiting to fix things. And it's like how do you do that as a labor of love? Like it's fascinating.
Like I said, even middle of the day on a Tuesday, like people are yelling inappropriately, and the system's like, "Hey, knock it off, knock it off."
Hey guys, we've got a comment in chat actually from 59 Blargity. The comment is, as a current staff member who's been here a little over a year, I can say that staff and ownership even has changed over time. But there will always be someone to pick up the reins. People are just passionate about this game. And in parentheses, but we're much smaller than 30, haha. So, Smiley, you may be overrepresenting them.
I had heard. I thought I'd seen the number 30, but I apologize if I'm.
Thanks for the input, 59 Blargity. Yeah. We always want to welcome chat and feedback.
Well, and can't agree more. Like, I don't know that there's a game that I've ever experienced where people are more. Maybe WoW. I think WoW and Final Fantasy
probably
11,
a counterpart.
Yeah, or like the games I've seen people that I've just be super passionate about.
Well, you think of something like Dungeons and Dragons, like that kind of like passionate community where people like play a game their whole life or want to play a game their whole life, right? Like the same style of game, same rule sets, that kind of stuff.
Completely agree. All right, we're about out of time. We could obviously probably keep going, but I mean, I've been really having a blast getting back into it. I think Van has too. We've got our buddy Z, who's been on the podcast a couple times, once. mentioned a couple times, has been playing with us, and we're hoping to get some of the other old crew back with us. You never know. You never know who we might be able to rope into.
Never know who you're going to run into in
trying
the
it out.
games.
That's right.
You're going to
That's
run into
right.
a lower Juno, right? Just in passing.
You guys have any final thoughts before I provide our information?
No, we're good. It's been great, and I'm excited to get back in there. So.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to drag it out a couple minutes and get my take on whether I'm going to start playing with you guys or not? I mean,
yeah, I'd love to.
Right, so we'll run a couple minutes long tonight.
Okay.
So this might surprise you, it may not. Like I would consider it, and I might download it. And I think there's two reasons. So one is one is a flip side to what I said earlier about how hard it would be to pick the game up and redo everything I had done. So a flip side of that though. And I think the beauty of I think I do feel this kind of like that power of it being capped at a certain expansion is, I took a number of breaks over the years. I played Final Fantasy XI starting with Wings of the Goddess and played for probably 3-4 years straight, maybe 2 or 3 years straight, and did a ton of stuff, but then like burn out, like I was putting so much time into it. So I took, a 6 to 10 month break, came back, played for a little bit less, maybe 2 more years, and then burn out, whatever. Every time I came back, it was less. And I think part of that honestly was the amount of bloat I came back to every time on my own, within my own character, and like the last time I went back to it, like after what were the final expansions called? I'm trying to remember. It was
yeah, I know what you mean.
The 3-part series one.
Well, no, but there was a final big expansion, and like there's a whole new land and Rune Fencer. What was it called? I don't even remember what it was called. If someone in chat is watching has played 11.
Seekers of Adeline.
Seekers of Adeline is what I'm thinking about. I wasn't thinking, but you're right. There was that other like post, like the memories of like that. I wasn't thinking of that, but Seekers of Adeline is what I was thinking of. But like.
Okay.
Like what? You had like 8 Mog Lockers. You had and so you'd come back and you'd have maybe 400 to 500 pieces of gear, and it's like just sorting through it, trying to remember what you had, and then like it was downloading Windower and then downloading Spellcast, and we've joked about this. Like I think the last time I came back, I spent like 3 or 4 days like just writing Spellcast, just to feel like I could go into a party and actually do something on my 99 dark and not be an idiot, because like you didn't want to just go into a group and then suck or like not like be able to perform. You wanted to do it at the highest level, and so all that being said, the thought of going back into the game clean and like not having to spend all this like going back into the game and just like experiencing the game like Van was saying, and not feeling like I had to spend 20 hours in Excel spreadsheets trying to like figure out what I did. There's an appeal to that, and I think that idea, the approach that Van mentioned of like this like Zen like approach to the game where it's like maybe there's no pressure to play every day. Maybe when you do play, there's no pressure to hit an objective. Maybe it's just you log in for 30 minutes, run around Windhurst, the best city ever, and like just kind of look at the game and log out.
All right, we should just wrap it up.
So those are my thoughts. I might play with you guys. We'll see.
I thought you said you had 2. You had one was the bloat. What was the second one? Sorry, you said there was 2.
No, that was the second one. The second one was the Zen thing.
Okay.
The approach to the game. But I think and there's one last. Yeah, one last thought though. Very much what Smiley was saying. The big counter to me would be just like thinking about like upcoming events or things and like dedicating that time. Like, we've talked a little bit about. I've been super excited about Lost Ark coming out for like 3 years, and that is coming out this year. And I plan on playing that. And so like. When that comes out, would I have time to balance between 2 different MMOs? I mean, might be a big ask, but.
Well, the nice thing about this one is they don't charge, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's cool.
There's really the only cost is really the time investment, right? Like it's not like you have to, throw down some money for it and then be like, oh, am I really getting my money's worth? Like that's not even consideration. So. You got that. I'll say the flip side to it is awesome not having the bloat, like knowing everything you have and like starting from scratch is awesome. And then you remember that you have 30 inventory slots and your gear takes up like 25 of them, and you're like, this is insanity. Like, and then you go to do the gobby bag quest and you're like, oh, it's like 15K for the mats and I've got like 3K, so guess I can't afford the first gobby bag. That's the cheap one, right? Like it's a double-edged sword for sure. But I think one thing too that I think is cool about doing, if we're kind of getting into this, we do have a group, right? Like I think it's always like, even though there's a lot to do. Yeah. There's a lot to catch up on. There's like quests and mission and fame and unlockables and all this stuff. But like we've got a group of people to do it with, and it's always more fun and easier, when you've got 3 or 4 people.
Yep.
And like maybe you always had that because you and Rido played from the beginning, but I know for me, like having Van and Z has made things so much easier than when I started on NA launch, and I was the only one I knew who played it at the time, and so everything I did was by myself and like just trying to meet people. So it makes a big difference. All right, well we probably should wrap it up. We've gone a little bit over. Shocking that we would go over on Final Fantasy XI. I can't believe it.
Skim the surface.
We'll probably do like part 2, part 3 sometime down the line. Maybe we'll do a follow up and see if, give an update on whether Shy gave in or stood strong against the temptation. But if you want to talk to us about Final Fantasy XI, as obviously we could talk about it as much as you would like. So like, we'd love to hear from you guys. Tell us your thoughts. If you have experience on this server, if you've been on it for a while, we'd love to hear your thoughts about, how things have changed, where things are going, what you think about it, good, bad, or otherwise. We'll share some of that on a future pod if you've got it. We can be found on Twitter at Focus Target. We have a YouTube page, Focus Target Podcast. All of our previous podcast episodes are on there. Some of the streaming we've done is on there if you want to check it out there. We're streaming live on twitch.tv/Focus Target Podcast. And of course, our email address, focustargetpodcast@gmail.com. That's probably the best way to get a hold of us for a quick response. So thanks for being with us today. Final Fantasy XI has been fun. This is your host, Smiley.
This is Shy.
And I'm Van. As always, cover us, Porkins. We're out.